elaborate more on working for that company that promoted music?
Oh, Shoko Sound?
Yeah. How did you get that job?
It was an ad in the paper.
Really?
Yeah.
And were you unemployed or you?
Yeah, I was. I must have been there, wasn't I? Well, that happened after I met Linda, and she came up here, and we were gonna, share an apartment. Well, we did at first. We had an apartment, and Dave came up and stayed with us for a whole semester. He went to an elementary school there one semester in Garland. Well, actually, it was a Dallas public school, but it's actually in Garland. It's weird, but anyway. I had been working for the BAE, putting in the baggage claim computer control system.
Yeah, that's out at Love Field.
At DFW.
DFW.
And we were doing the one for Braniff Airlines, which is now.
I remember that airline. TWA or.
Yeah. Braniff is no longer an airline; they're out of business.
Right.
And the other one that we were doing was for American Airlines, and it was in another terminal. The Braniff had its terminal, American has its terminal, and they run all the flights for their airline in those terminals, in and out, I'm sure others can come, but that's their main routing is from those terminals. Anyway, I think after we got that done, seems like they had a layoff, and I got laid off.
Oh.
I was an engineer there doing all different things, and on the airport, putting in little sensors. I remember one of the jobs I had was those little carts that run around on the rails that carried bags. There was a sensor that, well, let's see. There is a open core looking thing that was a magnetic coil, really, and the bottom of those ore car looking vehicles had about 6 or 8 inches wide copper plate that was the length of the car.
Okay.
Mounted underneath it, and whenever it went over that core, magnetic core that was mounted down in the track.
Yeah.
They had a sensor on both ends of that core. When the car came along, the first sensor got tripped and it turns on the power to that core. And the car, of course, has slipped up, and it uses magnetic induction forces to force the car back up to speed.
Oh, kind of like.
And there was another sensor on the backside that turned it off.
Right.
So it got turned on, and then it got turned off. And there was a delay in the second one that turned off, because it would send. Oh, I know what we did. We moved that sensor further out from the motor, so the car could continue to be pushed off of the motor, then hit that turn off and turn the power off. Because if you left the power on, those motors, those coils I was telling you about, we call them motors, they would burn up.
Oh.
They couldn't take a constant power to it.
So they were pulsating?
Based on
off.
Yeah, as a car went off.
Right.
Most of the time they're off.
Okay.
When a car came up, it boosted the car back up to speed, shot it on down the railroad. Anyway, that whole project, after the airport opened, and I was at the airport the day the airport opened, and there was
big.
We were
ribbon
there.
Cutting and all that stuff, and.
Yeah, it started eating bags, and cars would get. The cars could, for some reason, they would get Well, they were open, right? The
Yeah.
car was just an
It
open,
was like a buggy, yeah.
Yeah, like a buggy. It wasn't quite as deep as an ore car, but it's about the same size and only had about that much sideboard on
Right.
it. And there were some fast turns down in part of that Braniflin. It'd go down here and make a 90, and it was coming at a pretty good speed. Well, sometimes something would fly out of that thing, somebody's bag.
Yeah.
And it laid in the track.
Oh.
So next car came along, stopped because it hit that, whatever
Yeah.
it was. It stopped it because there's no motor right there.
Right.
And it's already been boosted. But that car was sitting there. So the car next after that would hit it.
Okay.
And it built up a train of crashed cars. And we had to go out there. We were walking. There was catwalks all around this thing. We kept our eye out for those collision situations.
Mm.
And
was that after it had been?
No, that was opening day.
So you guys didn't test it, or?
Oh yeah, but we didn't put stuff like they had. You know, the people that were bag busters, they just threw anything on there. There were certain rules about what you could put in it and what you couldn't. A suitcase was the ideal thing because they didn't have any. But they were throwing all. They put. I think there was a tricycle in one of them and all kind of crap, you know, that we didn't count on.
Right.
Weren't designed to do.
So it got made of top heavy.
Anyway, after I got laid off from them.
Is that place you saw the UFOs too? Same airport?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, you know, I lived in Grapevine during my work when I was working at DFW before it opened.
Okay.
It's just a drive, you know, a real short drive out there. I even rode that little 125 Duster.
Oh, really?
Sometimes.
That's the first bike I rode.
And I rode it out there to work because it was only about 3 or 4 miles.
Okay.
Anyway, after that happened, after I got laid off from that company, well, let's see, I saw the UFO while I was still there because the company's headquarters was over in Dallas a ways. And so I had to drive to work, you know, maybe 10 miles away, 5 miles, something like that, about 10, I guess. And so that one morning, I was driving the van, the one that has the sun.
Econoline van, yeah?
Yeah, Econoline van. And I forget why I stopped. I stopped for something. Pulled off the side of the road. Thought I had a flat or, I don't know, something like that. And I got out and checked and it wasn't a flat. And I just happened to look up in the sky and I saw these, I guess about 7 shiny dots in the sky, way up there, like at 50,000 feet, maybe 10,000, I don't know.
Wow.
Anyway, they're in a V shape, and this is early in the morning, and the sun was coming up over here, toward the, you know, I was driving into the sunrise,
right,
and looking above and seeing the sunlight reflect off of what these metal objects were, and I sat there and watched them, and I thought, what in the world is that? And as they moved further into toward the sun, they disappeared one at a time.
Oh, wow.
So it couldn't have been the fact they were moving it to a shadowed area, because the sun was right, you know, it was right over here, and they were going like that.
Did your mind think UFO when you saw this?
No, I kind of thought about it a little bit, but I didn't really give it much thought at the time. You know, they were in a V formation, like ducks or things, but they were metallic because you could see them, the shininess of the metal, you know, for the sunlight, for catching the sunlight. That's the only UFO I ever seen, if that's what it was. It was unidentified for sure.
Yeah.
UAP now they call it.
Yeah.
The military called it that. I think the reason they did it, changed the UAP.
Phenomenal.
They wanted to get away from the UFO name.
Yeah.
Because there were so many jokes and crap. So, you know, when people use a UFO, they'd think you're nuts, you know.
Yeah.
So they started calling them UAPs,
Yeah.
unidentified aerial phenomenon. Anyway, after I got laid off from that, about that time, I guess Linda and I split up, and she went back to Florida. And when she went back to Florida, I started looking in the want ads for a job. It was, back then jobs weren't hard to find, engineering jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was an outfit called Camsco in Richardson. So I set up an interview and went over there and talked to them, and they hired me on the spot.
Wow. That's nice.
And my job while I was there in the beginning was to handle all the electrical part of that water jet cutter that Camsco made.
Right.
And I designed all the circuit boards and made a little card cage and all the circuit boards in. Each one of the circuit boards controls some device on the water jet.
Right. And that led you to the Shoko? Camsco?
Oh, wait a
The
minute.
music?
Okay, now I back up a minute.
You talked about the Camsco yesterday.
I'm trying to remember what sequence we left Shoko out of that, didn't we?
Yeah, because you talked about Camsco yesterday and water jets and all that.
Yeah.
But what point did you do the Shoko and the music stuff? Must have been.
I can't remember exactly when I went. I know I was working in Garland for Vero. They had this big layoff going every other Friday, which was they paid every 2 weeks, the engineers, on salary.
Mm-hmm.
And so every week they had a payday every Friday. They were laying off droves of engineers. So I was afraid I was going to get laid off, and so I went to work for Vero, and they wrote the paperwork up as if I had been laid off. And I got a little money or something out of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Vero was going to build the air trams at DFW, and they were bidding to the DFW head guys. There was a group of men that oversaw all that, and they took bids for this train to go around, and they got stolen. The Vero was too naive, I think, and they let the bidding people there were people that worked for the DFW, management, or they accept the first rounds of bids, and there were only 3 companies that bid on it. One of them was way in California, and then there was Vero in Garland, and there was another one somewhere else. I can't remember where it was. And this board, DFW board, said it costs too much money. The first they said was small company like Vero didn't, they weren't a big corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And they were worried that they couldn't stand behind if anything went wrong, that they, couldn't, they were just a small company.
Ah, I see.
And they did that to the other 2 as well. So they gave us 2 or 3 months to resubmit another bid and cut the cost out of it to make it cheaper. And they said, but each one of y'all have got to go get a big corporation to back you. And so I don't know how it happened, but LTV was a big company in Dallas at the time, and Vero got them as their so-called big brother. Well, they sent over a whole shit pile of engineers, maybe 6 or 8 maybe even 10. I can't. And they cleared out this one area and put all these desks in here, and the people from LTV, they all engineers and our engineers, we were outnumbered. Actually, they had a lot more engineers than we had.
Oh.
We only had maybe a handful, 6 maybe at the most.
Yeah.
They had about 20 that they sent over. So we put our heads together with them and cut costs and reduce the bid price. And so during this time, of course, LTV, they picked up on what we were doing, engineering wise. Mm-hmm. And ultimately they stole the design. Oh. And the reason they got to bid on it themselves was that the second time we bid, they said that all of y'all's bids are too high. We can't afford that much money. And they said, we're just going to open up the whole thing to brand new bidders.
Anybody, yeah.
For a while it was just us. I said, they're going to try it. And so LTV, having stole the guts of what we did, bid on it and got it. And the reason they got it is because one of the vice presidents of LTV was on that fucking board. No. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. But they had a lot of trouble with it.
You're heading to Shoko?
Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe when I first got laid off from the baggage systems, I might have went to Shoko, and they had an ad in the paper too.
And what was their ad for? Engineer or sound engineer or no?
Engineer.
And their business was promoting concerts?
Their business was providing a sound system for rock groups. Ah. And we also supplied an engineer to work the console for the mix of the sound and all that stuff. Yeah. We supplied that guy and all the audio equipment for a concert.
And what was your...
And there was a lease,
What was your role in it?
I was the manager of the repair shop, or if we were going to invent something new, the electrical shop, they call it.
So invent like amplification, or what kind of stuff did you invent?
I don't think I ever invented anything while I was there. There was another guy there his name was Larry, and he had been doing all that stuff. He kind of was the inventor at that point, and he just kind of went off to the side and started doing his own thing, whatever that was at the time. And they gave me, they made me take over that part of his job, essentially.
So did you go to any live concerts? And
just the one where Dan was there.
And Dan was played drums for Ron Wood, is that right? Or from the Stones?
No, it wasn't. It was Rod Stewart and Faces and Three Dog Night were the two bands that played at that concert.
And he was watching them warm up, and then the guy asked if you wanted to try him, or what did Dan do?
I don't really know how he ended up there, but I suspect he went up and started talking to him because
he plays drums.
This is all done in Cotton Bowl, this concert.
Okay.
And so there was this huge scaffolding that was built. You've seen those.
Yeah.
And our guys built that and put these speakers up there.
That's when I first started going to concerts. That's how they were.
And they had a stage there, but there was a set of steps you could go up to the stage from the back side.
Yeah.
The back side was kind of like backstage.
Right.
It was just behind the stage there, and so I was standing around talking to somebody else, and I didn't pay much attention to what Dan was doing until they started a sound check. I don't know. I think it was Faces maybe band that he played with, or it could have been Three Dog Night. I don't know, but I think the drummer, whoever the drummer was a black dude. Not that that matters, but
Yeah.
I mean he was.
Was the Dan getting drum lessons already and all that?
Yeah, he'd already.
Okay.
Well, he'd already quit because
Yeah.
the drum lessons occurred when Pat and I were still together and we were living in
So
Burning
Dan
Tree.
already knew how to play.
Yeah, he'd been taught by this professional drummer over at SMU
Yeah.
in the music department. And he already knew how to play. So I guess he went up there and he probably was talking to him about playing the drums. And they must have said, you want to sit in and while we do the sound check? And I'm sure that's the way
Wow.
he got into it, I would expect. But
Dan,
I didn't know what was going on until I heard, they started a sound check, and I looked up there and there was Dan playing the drums for him.
He must have been so excited.
Yeah, I guess he did at the time. I don't remember exactly what happened. I think I asked him, how did you get to be play? And he said, oh, that black dude let me play.
So working for the music
Yeah,
Showco?
that was Showco.
Any more stories like that are neat?
Well, where the place of business, there was two parts to the place. One was the engineering building where I worked, and then they had an office up in downtown Dallas, or close to being downtown. And that's where all the booking and the interface to the bands all happened. And we rarely saw any bands because they never came down to where we were.
You never saw any rock stars?
No.
Mm.
They always went up to the office, so the business office downtown. And well, like I say, that engineering building that I was in, they had a wood shop, and they would make these big speaker cabinets, make a big box and put a absorbent material in it, fiberglass or something, and mount this big 15-inch speaker.
What kind of speakers do you remember? Were they Altex or JBL or?
I think they were JBL.
Yeah.
One of those big names like that.
Yeah.
And then they had this little cube-shaped amplifier.
Hmm.
It wasn't stereo. It was one amplified channel.
Yeah.
And it drove that speaker. And I think it was solid state, as a matter of fact. It didn't have tubes. They had transistors.
But you had to get all those in series, right? To the soundboard?
Yeah, they did all that, hooking it up to the console and all that stuff. I never did get involved with any of that. I just kind of hung out, and if cables got connectors needed to be changed, I would resolder those. And most of the time I didn't do anything because they have these roadies that work for Showco that went with whenever a tour, like Led Zeppelin was one of their biggest customers at that time. I never saw any of the band members, but they would set up the whole thing, on the stage, and they had roadies, what they call that lifted.
Oh yeah.
The roadies, they had rider rental trucks, and they put all the amps and shit for a system in there, and drove it to the first gig of the tour. And the roadies unloaded all the shit and hooked it all up. And one of the guys that went along, he wasn't called a roadie, he was called a sound engineer, and he went and worked the console once everything was hooked up and did sound checks, all that stuff. One of the tricks that they had was they had a graphic attenuator filter, you know what I'm saying? Like you can filter
An
out
equalizer?
Yeah, an equalizer. And but each frequency had a slider.
Yeah.
You could boost it or cut it.
I used to have one of those in my car.
Boost it or
They
cut
were
it.
popular in the 80s.
There was about, I don't know, 8 or 10 of these slider.
You'd create a sound wave.
Exactly, of course. So what they would do, the engineer would do, was once they got all the mics on the and turned on and all that, in order to keep feedback from happening during the show, they would start turning the sound up, and whenever it started to feedback, they would go up and notch out that frequency until it quit, and then they'd turn it up some more, and if it howled again, they'd find another frequency, and when they got done, the equalizer equalized the whole room or whole area. And so when they started out, they had that gain wide open to those. It was about a 3,000 watt system of audio. But I was back to the factory guy. They made these cabinets for the speakers, you know, and they had sponsored a rock band called DOA. Dead on Arrival.
Weren't they a punk band? No, I'm thinking SOD, Stormtroopers of Death.
They were out of Fort Worth. The band was there. And we built this special system just for them. Because we had, I guess, Shoko was sponsoring them. And to make all this stuff, they had people back in the wood shop sawed out parts and shit to put it all together. This one kid shot his hand off with a radio alarm saw.
Oh, Jesus. Wow.
And of course they picked up the hand, and and the hospital was just.
Were you there when that happened?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But the wood shop was back in the back, and I didn't know anything about it till here they come running out of the building, and he had stuck his nub inside in his gut and was bent over to stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
And somebody else had his hand.
Oh my God.
Well, what the fuck's going on? And they went up to the hospital, and it turned out that the hand surgeon up there was that hospital is Parkland, the same one that the president went to after they shot him up, Parkland Hospital. Anyway. They didn't want to retouch the hand because it was too mangled.
Oh, man.
So they just dressed it and pulled the skin around it and let it heal up. And the last time I saw him, he had one of them hook things, you know, chrome plated on his hand.
Yeah.
Once or twice I found a baggie of weed in the speaker cabinets. Somebody had put it in there and forgot about it.
Well, that was a big deal. It's like a felony, right, in Texas.
Oh, yeah. Even seeds.
Yeah.
Well, they could arrest you for it.
Yeah. Crazy.
And then there was another guy that they hired later on after I was already there to design this new something. I forget what it was he was working on. Oh. It was the lighting control. That Shoko was gonna now start lights. You know, well, they got lights now.
Yeah.
Light shows and shit to go into bed. They were gonna start doing that, and they hired this other guy to be in that division and help him do. And he was circuit design and all. But I got to be friends with him, and he had a. I think he was married, but anyway, he had a woman there that was either his wife or just his girlfriend. Anyway, they invited me and Linda over one evening on the weekend to dinner, and, just hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did that. On the way over there that night, we rolled, I think, 3 or 4 joints. Linda had them in her purse, and we had one that we lit up, and we were smoking it going down the road in that van, that Econoline van.
Yeah.
And there's a little old town that we went that way rather than going this other way because it was kind of back roads, and we didn't want anybody to hassle us, right?
Right.
So we also had we went by this little town's post office. It had a post office and a filling station, and that was about it as far as the town was concerned. So we went back and forth that way a lot. But this was in the evening, and a state trooper was hid out somewhere down there, and he pulled in
hippie van drives by.
Exactly. But
we saw
whenever we saw that, we went by this guy. We saw him,
Smoke.
We threw that.
It's like a Cheech and Chong movie.
We threw that roach out.
Yeah.
But she still had, I think, 2 or 3 of them in her purse.
Yeah.
So when they pulled up, she had, unbeknownst to me, she put those joints in her mouth and started chewing them up. And she ended up swallowing them.
Right.
She got stoned in hell.
I bet.
Anyway, they says, where's I know you got weed on you. I could smell it because we'd just been smoking. I can smell it. And I said, we don't have anything. I don't know what you're talking about. So they went to the back and opened up the back of that van, those doors. No. There was 2 burlap bags full of cow manure that we had bagged up. And to put on our garden. We this guy that had a ranch and they grabbed that bag and thought it was weed.
Yes.
Like that. God, they choked Spot and threw it back down. And they said, go on. And they just let us go.
That's awesome.
But that was scared shitless because, it was a felony back then. We for sure went to jail.
Yeah. Well, I guess you better call the interview.
That's pretty much all the Shoko that I remember of any note that'd be worth telling about. Oh, there's one other story.
All right, tell the last story. Yeah.
While I was there, this guy came in one day and said his name was Smith Craig. Smith was his given name, and Craig was his family name.
Interesting first name.
And he said that he had bought a sound company in Atlanta, Georgia, and was just trying to figure out how you do this. And he was going to come up there and work in order to learn how to do it, how we did it, because we were the best there was at that time.
Okay.
And he said he told them, the managers that oversaw this engineering building, that he'd work for free in order to just hang out and see how we did stuff. And they said, well, we'll just hire.
Sounds like a spy to me.
We'll go ahead and hire you.
Yeah.
And pay you money. And he agreed to do that. Anyway, this guy eventually he got put on the touring of Jesus Christ Superstar that was...
Oh.
It was in New York City.
I saw that tour in '76.
I'm sure it was.
It came here, and I saw him in San Rafael.
But I think if I'm not mistaken, the one that he was with was up in New York somewhere. And it ran for like 2 or 3 years.
Well, yeah, it was popular.
And anyway, after the tour was over and they finally, quit doing that, this guy absconded a whole system.
No way.
And it just disappeared. And when they tried to find out...
He took the whole sound system? In a van or something?
No, in the Ryder trucks.
Wow.
The U-Haul trucks.
Right, yeah.
Apparently, after they loaded all the shit in the truck, apparently he talked them into letting him drive it back to wherever or bringing it back to Dallas because it had been out there a year or so. Well, he disappeared with the system and never to be seen again.
Well, that name had to be bogus.
Well, they tried to find this guy, and of course there was no such person.
Yeah, of course. Smith Craig.
That was crazy.
Wow.
But that crowd, he'd come out there to Grapevine. And we'd smoke with him, and Linda and I would smoke, and he would tell these stories about things that happened. One thing, he pulled out a bong we'd never seen before. This one bongs real
Right.
new. And he says, I met Cheech and Chong, and they gave me this bong.
Really?
That's what he said. But I don't know if that was true or
Well,
not.
Chong now has this whole line of pot and bongs.
Yeah, they've been running ads on
Yeah.
Twitter.
Yeah, I bet.
They're gummies is what they're pushing on Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. I saw
They're
it.
10.
It's very detailed ad.
I think they're 10 or something. Level 10.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's pretty much
All right.
all the crazy stuff I remember, Shoko.
Well, until
Or
next
tell 'em.
time. Thanks for your stories.
All right.
Those were good.